Hail cheaters, and welcome to the first and possibly last Always Cheating solo pod. My name is Josh Landon. Brandon is still away. He is traveling through India. I think Spain is involved as well. He may actually be on his way to Spain at this point. So if you are based in Spain, this is your chance to hit him up. But otherwise, this is just me doing a solo pod, which I've never actually done for the main feed. We've done this for our podcasts or Patreons many times over the years, what we call our kitchen table podcasts. It's kind of started off as solo pods. We almost always do them together now. So kind of fun to just sort of check in. But obviously I'm marching in a tradition set up by many who've gone before me on YouTube and for mainstream pods. Let's see how it goes. I'm taking Andy and the General and Focal and others as my inspiration as we do this solo pod today. But Brandon will be back next week. And next week actually will be a chance for us to really dig into Game Week 25 for reasons that'll be obvious in a second here. We aren't really going to get too much into Game Week 25. This is really more about kind of taking the temperature, talking a little bit about the last couple of days in FPL, which is it's been kind of crazy. It's been a pretty wild couple of days, and so we're gonna talk through it and talk through some strategy over the next couple of weeks because there's really quite a lot to consider. Talk a little bit about the initial thoughts and returns on the assistant manager chip, and then answer some questions. So let's kick things off here. So do I want to do a score check to kick things off? Not really. I guess I probably should. I'm on 75 points so far, and which is like, it's okay. I feel like that is not the worst return in the world, but it's not like super exciting either, I would say. Let me pull up for anybody who's watching on YouTube my squad, so you can take a look at it here and have a good laugh for a second. No, I mean it's going okay. I'm on 75 points. I have let's see. I have Palmer tomorrow. I feel like he doesn't even count at this point. His they do the effective ownership thing, right? So how much having a player helps or hurts you. He was at exactly 0% for me in my mini leagues. He is universally owned. His returns do not help or hurt me. So great. Tomorrow's like a full-on free roll. We can just watch him play West Ham, and we can all root for him together, I guess. I still have, after that, Trent Alexander-Arnold to go, which I think he'll be fine. I was just reading a little bit about it before the pod today. He has at least what's rumored to be a quad injury. So much better than the dreaded hamstring issues that will almost always knock you out for 2 or 3 weeks. He is, there's a chance he's back as soon as the second game week. The second leg, I suppose, of Liverpool's double game week. So we'll see what we get from him from that. I also have Branthwaite still to go. Honestly, I was sort of just picking between the 3 Everton defenders. I actually needed to free up some money in order to activate the assistant managership. I forgot that you had to pay to buy the manager. So I had this whole plan worked out, and then I realized I did not have 1.5 million to bring in Arne Slot. So Branthwaite came in. I sort of had my pick of any of the Everton defenders, and I just went for him because his ownership was the lowest of the 3 that I was considering. Possibly a dumb reason. I don't know. It turns out Tarkowski kind of would have been the option to go for there. Even Michaelenko is probably a slightly better option because he created a big chance. But I have Branthwaite. So let's see how it goes with Branthwaite. And I have Njai as well, who got a nice goal and 2 bonus points as well late. I thought he was on 1. It looks like he actually went from 1 to 2. So feeling good about the Njai transfer. Unfortunately, I brought in Calvert-Lewin the week before, and so I had to kind of burn what felt like an extra transfer to make that move. But it was one of those. Thanks again to Dave for being on the podcast last week, and he was talking about trying to avoid that kind of sunk cost feeling in FPL and just sort of making the most sensible move. And for me, it was moving the injured Calvert-Lewin to the like for like and Jai. I mean, who knew that Beto was going to get a brace, right? I mean, that seemed unlikely. Certainly wasn't what the kind of betting odds would have indicated either. But the very late, I think it was in extra time, and Jai goal makes that transfer worthwhile. And then I also have Mo Salah away, although I have him just captain and not triple captain. So I guess I'm sort of not like rooting against Mo. I find it very hard to root against Mo Salah. He's a little too lovable to properly root against. But I also have Arne Slot as my assistant manager, and I got 10 points from him. So in the end, the Salah goals kind of helped because they were extra goals. The assistant managership has turned out to be extraordinarily complicated, and I cannot decide if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I am actually leaning towards good thing because I have to admit that my engagement on Friday was certainly heightened, and I was really trying to figure out what to do. Once they announced that there was another double game week coming, literally next week, as I say, the next game week in game week 25, but we don't actually know who's going to play in that game week. It really changed, I think, kind of everybody's strategy, or at least it forced you to, think about your strategy a little bit and decide whether you wanted to sort of continue on. I was playing a triple captain Salah. In the end, I sort of, we'll see how it all pans out, right? Let's treat the double game week as two legs. And the point distribution for the assistant managers is actually pretty interesting so far. I did take a quick look. Let me I'll just do it on this little screen that I've shared already, because you can just pull up the managers now on the on the transfer page. It is so weird. I mean, it's honestly fine, and I guess it's like the best way to do it. But it's just, we've been, if you've been playing fantasy for several years, more than a decade in my case, to suddenly just be able to buy and sell managers is the strangest thing. I will say, I feel like you should get your manager for free. Once you activate the assistant managership, that first manager should be free. And then if you want to transfer later, you can spend you could spend some money. Yeah, Kim says that I think FPL wants to make assistant manager permanent fixture next season. I think I'm okay with that. I mean, maybe it makes sense to launch it in mid-season like this for everybody to kind of try it out a little bit. So far, it's honestly worked out pretty well, with all the kind of popular picks. I think they're still working out how to show the points on here. I don't think, if I recall correctly, you could not use the system managership until game week 24. But when you pull this up, you can see returns from 23 from Moyes as well. And so this was throwing me off at first that like I thought it was that Moyes had scored 31 points in in the Leicester match, which it turned out not to be the case. It was 12 points from Moyes. So 12 for him, 10 for Slot. Arteta scored 11 points in the game. And so you can go into the vagaries of the assistant managership on the website and look at points. You get points for the amount of for a clean sheet. You get points for a win. You get points for a number of goals that you've scored. You get points if you pull off sort of giant killings, right? Like if you're at the bottom of the table and you knock off a top team. And I think the interesting manager here, and the one that sort of maybe does lay out a template for what would be a good kind of non-double game week usage is Marco Silva, who finished on 18 points. So if you had activated your system managership this week and put it on full as Marco Silva, you would actually have the highest returns so far. He had 18 points, and yeah, so you got a manager table bonus. It's like everything is new. All the data is new. But yeah, and then he lost. Yeah. So anyway, listen, I'm not going to try to get into the point distribution here for Marco Silva, but you can now go and take a look at the assistant managers and get some real evidence so far of what's working and what's not. And the rationale for me with using it on Slot. So basically I think it was something like 10 a.m. Eastern time on Friday, we found out that there was going to be another double game week. And what made things sort of complicated with the next double game week is that we didn't quite know who was going to play in it yet. And I think it really force you to maybe make some sort of gambling, to gamble a little bit, because in theory, if you were to use a system manager chip on slot, it gave you an opportunity to basically cover an extra game week with your chips, or an extra fixture, I suppose. And the idea here is that if Liverpool beat Spurs at midweek, then you will have the chip that you've just activated on slot will be used for a double game week in 24. It'll be used for a double game week in 25, and then it'll also be used for 26. Right, so that's 3. Right, so you get 5 fixtures covered, just from the one chip, which is. It's just unlikely that you're going to get double game weeks like that, like further on in the season. And so that was sort of the gamble. I mean, the tricky thing is that Spurs are such an unpredictable team. I guess unpredictable is a nicer way of saying inconsistent. Very unpredictable team, and they are up a goal in the League Cup. So basically, it breaks down like this. We are 9/11s through game week 24. We have a Chelsea match tomorrow. And then we don't have the final match of game week 24 until next week, Wednesday. Right? So we have an entire week and change, until a week and a half, basically, until game week 24 concludes. During that time, they will play the second leg of the League Cup matches. I think they're both on Wednesday this week. And in those matches, Newcastle host Arsenal. Newcastle are up 2-0 in that. So in theory, you would expect Newcastle to advance. But Arsenal just destroyed Man City today in the featured match on Sunday. So you have to at least give Arsenal a chance, I think, to knock off Newcastle in that match. And then Spurs are also up a goal, and they go to Liverpool, and so they're at a pretty distinct disadvantage, I would say. Not only because Liverpool are the better squad and they're at home, but just because of the injuries, and I just think it's going to be very hard for them to not concede multiple goals, and then the sort of onus is on them to kind of score enough to make up for that. And I don't know, the odds are basically, there's this FPL Focal, credit to him, he put together a pretty clean chart that talks about the odds of all of these things happening. The odds of Liverpool knocking Spurs out, they put at 62%. I'm not sure where that comes from. If Arsenal and Arsenal knocking out Newcastle's at 16%. So what we know is that depending on who wins in the League Cup, those teams will have double game weeks in 25, and basically they're kind of moving up the League Cup final fixtures in order to, or like the fixtures that are going to be missed during the League Cup final, they're going to move them up to a double game week in 25. So if Liverpool win on Wednesday, then they will have another double game week in 25. They will have Wolves at home and Villa away. And because of that double, Villa will also get a double in that case. And they'll have Ipswich at home and Liverpool at home. So sort of one good, one bad. Although Villa have actually played Liverpool quite well in recent seasons, if you put any kind of stock in that. Certainly they won't be massively kind of intimidated going into that fixture. If Spurs win, right? So staying with that fixture, I would say, hopefully you can follow all of this. But if Spurs win, which again, they're up 1-0, it's certainly not impossible. They just went to Brentford and won 2-0 somehow today. If they do that, then they double in 25, and they will play Man United at home and Fulham away. And that is, I think, going to be a very chaotic double, because it will be very tricky to find the right combination of Spurs assets. It's very hard for me to just completely not play a double game week. I'm sure I can talk myself into somebody, but I do think that'll be really tricky given all of the injuries. And just the thought of me just kind of punting on Son or something like that. I don't know. I don't love it. That will also give Fulham a double game week. And so it's slightly better for me having 2 Fulham assets in my squad. And Fulham would have 2 home matches. They'd have Forest at home and Spurs at home. So could create a scenario where you genuinely consider a double, the captaincy on any number of Fulham assets, really. I mean, Anthony Robinson, despite playing two squads that could both absolutely score in those matches, might actually be the way to go if it goes that way. I mean, you have Raul Jimenez as well, though. As a Jimenez owner, he is kind of maddening this season. It's so hard to find the right. I guess you just never bench him. I don't know. I've benched the last two times he scored, he's been on my bench, so it's been a little bit tricky to kind of get it right with him. So that's what happens. Those are the doubles that we have if the legs break a certain way in the Liverpool Spurs match. The other match is Chelsea. And the reason they're doing this, by the way, is because of European commitments, right? The Europa League in the case of Spurs, Champions League in the case of Arsenal. There's just so many midweek fixtures to come, especially with the kind of supersized Champions League this year, and final matches being played, final group stage matches being played through last week. It's just very hard to fit in extra fixtures, and so that's why they're kind of rushing these in. It's actually pretty logical, and it probably creates less chaos down the line, but it does make it kind of tricky, I think, as fantasy managers. Although in some ways I don't really mind it because it's sort of an interesting problem to try and solve. So the other leg, though, is Newcastle hosting Arsenal. And if Newcastle win, then they just don't have a double in 25 because they don't have any of these European commitments. So they're just going to figure out when to play the match that won't be played the weekend of the League Cup final, right? Because they would be in the League Cup final if they win. They will not play that match. And they will not play the match they have scheduled for that weekend, and they'll just reschedule that at a later date. If Arsenal come back and win, then they will have a double in game week 25, as will Chelsea. So Arsenal would host Chelsea, play away to Leicester, and Chelsea would play away to Arsenal and away to Brighton. So, the real chaos result is Arsenal knocking out Newcastle. I think that will really will tax us. And I think if you have 5 transfers right now, it is an amazing time. A lot of flexibility ahead. I think in some ways, I underestimated the potency of having so many transfers. I mean, I knew it would be an important change to the game, but as a relatively impatient, kind of aggressive manager, I am definitely feeling the effects right now of having fewer transfers available to me. I think the people who have 5 are really in a great spot. And because once the assistant manager chip has been activated, you cannot play a chip for any of those 3 weeks, like a different chip. You actually can't wildcard either. So I have 1 transfer going into 25. So I guess for me, the ideal outcome would be Liverpool beating Spurs, because I would have 3 Liverpool assets with my 2 players in slot, and then I have 1 Villa asset. I have just Morgan Rogers, but relatively easy to get 1 or 2 extra assets, even if I just went for a like a sub 5 million defender, right? So there are at least some options with Villa. Liverpool effectively covered. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for there, is that's sort of maybe the least chaotic for me personally. But if Spurs knock Liverpool out and Arsenal knock Newcastle out, get ready for proper chaos. It's going to be kind of insane. So because in that case, you would have 4 teams doubling. And if you have, if you played that assistant managership, I would have 1 transfer to cover 8 fixtures in game week 25. I might burn like a minus 20 or something like that if that comes to pass. So really interesting. It sounds a little chaotic when you kind of say it all out loud, but I think as a strategic challenge, it's kind of fun in a way. It's sort of fun to think this stuff through and sort of figure out what makes what the best strategy is. I will say, I think so far there was a question from Alharo on our Discord, and he said, "I know it's not over, but which chip strategy is one so far, assistant manager or triple captainers?" Based on just sheer points, I suppose you have to put it on the triple captainers. It was always a gamble, and I think it's kind of interesting because Salah kind of did something that Salah does sometimes, which is that I didn't felt I didn't feel like he maybe had one of his great matches. He was fine, but it wasn't like he wasn't sort of just creating chance after chance or taking shot after shot. But Gakpo won a pen. He took a pen, like one of the best, like for like a kind of conventional pen. It was one of the best pens I feel like I've seen in a long time. It was just absolutely fantastic pen. And then they're just sort of motoring along. And then he just does the like, this is what Salah does when he's feeling really good about himself kind of goal, where he's just kind of, it almost feels like he's sort of leaning back. And he, I haven't seen the replay of the goal, but since I first saw it, but he, basically it was just a beautiful strike, and that was it. It was sort of, I'm not sure he actually had more than 2 shots on goal in the entire match, but the 2 that he had, he scored, and so he's and they kept a clean sheet, so he's on 16 points. Again, those helped slot too, though, right? Because they ensured that that Liverpool won. It helped their goal difference. And so it was sort of it was not like they were not in direct opposition to each other. It was not like one sort of significantly helped or significantly hurt the other. With that said, I would sort of prefer that I had just triple captain Salah and just save the triple captain for later. And I think it's really the kind of Marco Silva type stuff that is sort of, as part of it. It's just like I do sort of like the idea of going for like a more kind of high risk gamble later on in the season and sort of going for some massive giant killings. I will say, in theory, when there's a good opportunity, like a good chance that if you just pick a kind of random manager for a giant killing, then there's a good chance it's really just not going to work out at all for you, right? I mean, Ruud van Nistelrooy got 0 points, right, in the match against Everton. So if he was the player you activated the assistant managership on, you came away from with literally nothing. So that is the downside, I suppose, of the kind of gamble of a giant killing, is that if you want to pick an Ipswich or any like the sort of teams at the bottom of the table, right? A Spurs, Man United. No, I'm just joking. But like an Ipswich or Leicester, there's a good chance that it's going to come back to hurt you. So just something to think about if you have not played the chip yet. And you're still kind of thinking about how you want to use it. So it's sort of like everybody has won a little bit. I feel like it's sort of worked out okay so far. And and let's see what happens with the with game week 25 on next week pod. When Brandon's back, we can walk through game week 25 a little more thoroughly, and we'll certainly have more information about the doubles and who plays. And so that's kind of, but I did want to lead things off with that because I just felt like it was kind of it's looming. So the matches on Wednesday, I wouldn't say that I necessarily am always watching the second leg of League Cup finals, but I will be more engaged than I've ever been with those matches. I have to find out what channel they're on in the United States. I don't know how different it is. I know it's not ideal in the UK either. I mean, especially there's just less coverage, but so we have somehow conspired to have every single Cup and Premier League match on a different network, a different paid network. And so I genuinely don't know where those League Cup matches are, but I will find them and I will try to watch them typically on a second screen while I am in a work meeting, like all true American football/soccer fans. You gotta find that window to squeeze those matches in. So that's where we are with game week double game week 25, which is incoming. There's a little bit of transfer news as well that I thought I'd run through. First, that Marcus Rashford, moving to Villa. Everyone must go. This is now what's happening, and I guess I like it. I mean, sure, why not? I don't know. I feel like let's see what he can do. I like it for everybody. I mean, Duran just left for was it Saudi Arabia? He left for a Middle East club, and for quite a lot of money. I mean, you can sort of understand why Villa felt like they had no choice. And so there's an argument that they just kind of needed another forward. I mean, I'm using forward in the kind of non-fantasy sense, the traditional sense, right? They just needed someone who could play in the forward spot, and I think you saw that a little bit in the in the Villa match midweek, right, when Watkins went off, and it just there really wasn't a kind of focal point or somebody who could just score. And so I do think that it's sort of an interesting problem that maybe he can solve. I mean, it's been the season's gone terribly for him so far. It's been kind of a bad couple of years, really. He's on 4 goals this season, but he's only 2 years removed from a pretty spectacular run where he sort of, like it was just, I think Ole was still there, and it was just sort of like, he was just kind of back for a little while. And, unfortunately that didn't last. Last season was pretty poor for him. I think he was on, let me pull it up here a little bit. He was, yeah. So he's on 4 goals and 1 assist this season, 7 and 3 last year. So really pretty poor last season as well. And then 17 and 7 the year before that. It's just wild. I mean, he had 11 and 11 during that COVID year, the year when it was him and Martial, and everything was sort of, Bruno was at his best. Everything was clicking. So he's got it in him. I just don't know. Is it a Phil Foden situation where there's nothing? He's just, he needs to be kind of properly motivated or rekindle the spark, or is it more like Delhi, where it's just over and he's just sort of washed? And I don't know. I mean, I guess what I would suspect is that he's just kind of washed. What I hope is that it all works out, and then he sort of comes back and is better. I mean, I don't dislike Marcus Rashford. He's a frustrating player to own in fantasy, but he seems like a pretty good guy. And I don't know. I don't want to spend the energy hating on him. Like, I sort of hope it works out. Let's see if it does. I genuinely have no idea. So there is a chance, as I noted, that Villa have a double in 25. I would be very disinclined to bring him in, even if Watkins were out, just because I think it's really risky. I doubt his fitness is there, and so I don't know how you could sort of drop him right in as a starter. As a starter, I just don't think that's something that I would recommend. So. But more to come. Again, let's see if we get that double from Villa first. Other transfer news, Evan Ferguson. I just saw this before I started potting. Evan Ferguson has a loan agreement in place to go to West Ham. I love this move. I think it makes total logical sense. He's had a terrible year at Brighton so far. Has not been able to get going at all. He's had very limited minutes, but he scored 6 goals in each of the previous 2 seasons. He's looked fantastic at times. I feel like he's really, an outstanding player. And so, and certainly West Ham need a forward. I mean, given everything that's happening right now with Antonio and with the aging forward that they signed in the offseason, a Fulkrug out for, I don't even know, just as unknown, the dreaded unknown return date listed for Fulkrug. So, so let's, so I think that's kind of a fun signing. Again, not really anyone that you should be bringing in right away, but I like it. I like it for West Ham, even if it's never a fantasy thing. It's sort of a fun move. And if I were a West Ham supporter, I'd be kind of excited about this move. Let's see how it all works out. So it's only 5.5 million too. So there's at least a chance that he can, he has not had any opportunities so far. I'm just looking at his returns. His minutes are the most minutes. He had 69 minutes in one match, 59 in another, and everything else was sub 20 minutes. So, it's not like he's had a number of runouts and just kind of failed to deliver. He's just not getting any space at all in that squad. Partially, I think it's because Danny Welbeck's played so well, but who knows? De Zerbi didn't ever seem hugely enthusiastic about Ferguson either. So, who knows what the deal is there. All right. So other moves. Let's see. I guess that's kind of it, actually. So let's move on to some match reviews. Talked a little bit about the Bournemouth-Liverpool match already. Salah, talked about him. Arne Slot with 10 points to start things off. I think it's kind of interesting. I guess some of the excitement died down about the Bournemouth midfielders when the double game week was announced for 25. Just less appealing because they don't double, and so you didn't necessarily want to burn a transfer, bringing one of them in. But one of those matches where I didn't come away feeling less excited about the Bournemouth midfielders. I thought, Semenyo had multiple chances. I mean, he came away from the match with an XG of 0.7, which is spectacular. Justin Cliver was on 0.6, 0.68. So they both were, had fantastic matches. Atara, who was maybe the hottest option of the three, was I thought a little less involved on the attack, but Cliver and Semenyo still great pickups, I think, and I think once game week 25 is over, will be, exciting options again. With Liverpool, I mean, the question now is, are we going to get an extended run out is Trent going to be out for an extended amount of time, and will Bradley then get an extended run out? Who knows? We should know more in the next couple of days, and we'll see. I mean, I think that what we're seeing, further is just that it does feel like Konate kind of gets you there. Like, I'm not certain that you're getting that much more from Van Dijk at this point. I mean, superior XG for sure, but that 1.2 million makes a pretty massive difference in terms of what you can do. Konate is at 5.2 million, Van Dijk's at 6.4. So certainly, if I were, I don't really know. I don't know who would be looking at bringing in a third Liverpool asset for 25. I guess maybe if you had two and I don't know, I guess if Trent's out for an extended run, then Konate I think is really appealing. Or if maybe you had two and then I don't know, who knows? Maybe for some reason you only had two. I don't know, whatever the reason might be. I do think that Konate makes a lot of sense if Liverpool double in 25, just because you do get that. You get the two. You get two matches, but one of them being a home fixture with Wolves. Although Wolves did have a nice match on Saturday. So, but otherwise, I think Gakpo has just proven to be just a really, kind of in the Firmino mold a little bit. I guess he scores a little more than Firmino, but just a real pleasure to watch. He can score, he can assist. He's just really involved. It's like every match that Gakpo is in, I feel like he is just. I guess that's why I made the Firmino comparison, because I always felt that way about Firmino too. He's one of my favorite players, maybe one of my all-time favorite players to watch in the Premier League, because it was just so fun to watch him do everything and be really unselfish. And he could press. He was willing to. If there was like a breakaway, he was always looking for the extra pass to give somebody a better opportunity to score. So I don't know, maybe Gakpo is a little more kind of goal focused, but it's just, they're a fun squad to watch right now. It was a really impressive performance, I thought. I'm not sure that 2-0 was necessarily a deserved scoreline. You could certainly argue that Bournemouth deserved to get something out of that match, or at least score a goal, but that's how it goes. And so, so it didn't come away feeling any worse about the Bournemouth defenders. It was just maybe a slightly unlucky match. Forest Brighton was the match that a lot of us woke up to. I woke up to if you're in the US. I slept right through it. I was sort of, there was like just bigger things happening later on in the day. I was not banking on 7-0 and a Wood hat trick. Crazy thing to wake up to if you did not own Wood, or like many people, dropped Wood in order to bring in someone like Njai for the double. And so, a real tale of, or I don't even really know. I won't use a cliche here, but just if you had Wood, it was fantastic. If you didn't or dropped him, it was kind of a rough morning, because I felt like you were kind of 17 points in the hole already. So, but just an amazing season for Wood so far. I think he's now up to 17 goals and 2 assists on the year, which is just absolutely fantastic. He finished on 84 bonus points in the bonus point system. Gibbs White, by the way, again, just a low-key spectacular season. Again, not necessarily from a fantasy point of view, but he's just incredible. Just having a great season for a number 10, and really, I feel like Wood gets all the attention. People are talking about this team, at least maybe just in fantasy. But I guess it's just 5 goals and 6 assists for Gibbs White, although he did miss He's missed one, two, three, four. Yeah, he's missed several matches so far in the season. And so I think that does deflate his numbers a little bit, but I think he's been great. Definitely an option to consider for fantasy down the line. And just 6.4 million. So it doesn't break the bank to bring him in. And Brighton just so unpredictable. It's just like, it's so interesting that even with the new manager, it feels like it's kind of a De Zerbi redux. It's sort of like they're like a better version of Spurs in terms of they can sort of win or lose to anybody. You don't kind of ever know what version you're going to get. And from a fantasy perspective, that's just like a terrible, like, cocktail. You just don't really, you don't want to have any of their players in fantasy. You don't necessarily want to have players from the teams that are playing them because you don't quite know what you're going to get either. But the Forest defense, who I just still have not owned the entire season, it does go a long way to explaining my overall rank at the moment. But sells on 6 saves. Surprisingly, I guess just there were so many goals he wasn't able to get it. But yeah, the rare 6 saves from a keeper and no bonus points, but still 8 points is a pretty solid return there, obviously. Man United Crystal Palace, that one was today. I'm just sort of going through like the matches that really caught my attention. I thought that Mateta was amazing again. I know he has 6 goals in 5 matches, and he's still just 5.5% owned in the game. So for anybody who talks about sort of groupthink or FPL being solved, or that there's kind of no way to be different, I think just look at Mateta. I mean, this is a guy. It was not like impossible to predict a return like this from Mateta. He was absolutely fantastic last season. He started to come into form. It was a great run for Palace. Now, again, I'm saying this. Did I bring him in? No, I did not. I probably should have. That would have been great. But again, there are options out there for people who are trying to be creative and find people who have low ownership. Like if you just want to target manager, like players with like sub 10% ownership, there are a ton out there. I mean, Gibbs White, I don't know what his ownership is at either, but he's at 4.5%. So you have there are fantastic options available for nothing, right? Just like for sub 5%, you can get some players on teams that are performing incredibly well and that have sort of very low ownership. And Palace are now officially in the performing very well territory. They have 4 straight clean sheets in their away matches. Kind of a weird stat, but it is true. It just feels like everything that we sort of thought we would get from Palace going into the season, it just took them quite a long time to get there. Basically, it took them half the season to get there, but now we're seeing it, and you can see why everyone thought they would be excellent this year. I mean, they have a really solid striker in Mateta. They Eze is fantastic. Obviously, he's dealt with a lot of injury issues, but he's still a fantastic player, and their defense is excellent. Dean Henderson maybe being the worst part of that defense, but Munoz is fantastic. Kind of everybody's had a really solid year I should say everybody has. Since December, everyone has really started to click for them. And I guess maybe it was just, missing Michael Elise and sort of adjusting to life without him. But they are we have to kind of drop this idea of Palace as a kind of disappointing squad or maybe an inconsistent squad. We've actually seen quite a lot of consistency from them over the last several weeks, as much as you're going to get from a kind of mid-table club anyway. And again, even if you just focus on the defense and Mateta, I think there's a lot of value there. The other key matches, Spurs holding Brentford to 0 away at the GTAC. I'm always talking about the GTAC as a very tough place to go in and play. Now, granted, it was not a night match at the GTAC. The GTAC at night is fierce. The GTAC at day, it can be solved. So I don't really know. I mean, when it comes to Spurs, I suppose if they win against Liverpool, then we really have to start talking about them again. Otherwise, I almost feel like it just sort of makes me wonder what's going to happen in the League Cup. Does it sort of help them push on, or does it, is there like a little bit of a kind of, I don't know, like they're not. It's like they sort of righted the ship a little bit, and so maybe they have like a little bit less of a like fire. Like they're not trying to save the manager's job now. Like everybody doesn't matter quite as much. I don't really know. It's just it's a weird time with them. But there's so many players out for them right now. Solanke, Johnson, Madison, Dogi, Romero, Dragusin, Vicario. It's just it's just so many injured for them, and so even if they do double in 25, it's really going to be a struggle. I mean, Kulusevski in some ways is the best player, but his returns are they're not fantastic. I mean, they're just okay. I mean, he has 1 goal, 0 assists in those last 5 matches. He looks good in all of these matches, but he hasn't necessarily contributed in a big way. Son, got the 2 assists today. Goal in 21. I guess he'll probably end up being the pick, although he's the price is super high. I mean, he's at 9.8 million. Again, sub 5% ownership, so there's maybe some value there. But just the question of whether you would consider dropping a Palmer-ish asset, I would not recommend it. Right? I have Bruno in my squad, so which has been a complete as I knew it would be. I don't know. Somehow I got Bruno knowing that it wouldn't work out, and so Bruno to someone like Son, maybe that makes sense for game week 25. Let's see what happens in the League Cup matches. So yeah, and then I mean, it was from Brentford's perspective, I don't know. It just feels like a fluke. It's a little bit like the Bournemouth match where you can draw conclusions if you want to, but to me, Mbomo is still a fantastic asset. They have, he's got 4 goals and an assist in the last 6 matches. They have a great run coming up: West Ham, Leicester, Everton, Villa in their next 4. So I certainly wouldn't be making any changes. I mean, I guess the one piece of news is Flecken, missed the match with injury. We don't think we really know necessarily what's going on with him yet, if he's going to be available for 25 or not. So more just something to keep an eye on. We'll see. Valdemarson, who is I think he's the starting keeper for the Icelandic national team, if I'm not mistaken. At the very least, he has caps for them, if nothing else. So, and he was, I don't know, okay. He wasn't like amazing, but so we'll see. I mean, I know that Flecken hasn't been amazing either, so I doubt they'll rush him back. So, more to come on that front. Other results from the weekend. I haven't even talked about Arsenal and Man City. So Arsenal, Man City was today's the featured match. It was 5-1 Arsenal win, which was it was a 1-0 at halftime, 1-1 early in the second half. It was really, I don't know that I was predicting a 5-1 as a final score, but obviously, in some ways, the story of the season is Man City and their kind of defensive collapse. And Rodri is now I feel like he should just win the Ballon d'Or again for like a second year in a row, because he is clearly the most important player in the world, given how unable Man City are to defend without him in the squad. But when you look at the returns from the Arsenal players, it's really why I would kind of prefer that they did not beat Newcastle when they played them in the second leg of the League Cup, because I don't even know who you could I guess Havertz would be a top option. Super inconsistent. They're all it's spread out so much. Odegaard, I had it for several weeks, got nothing from him. Lewis Skelly scored a goal. I mean, Thomas, Declan Rice got 2 assists. I mean, it was just like all over the place in terms of the returns, and then they failed to keep a clean sheet again, which is kind of the story for them outside of the Wolves match last week. So I just think it's really tricky to kind of move forward with any Arsenal assets. It was a strange match in that regard, where you sort of it's a 5-1 win, but kind of nobody even really had many Arsenal assets outside of maybe one or two defenders, neither of whom, and like the most heavily owned would be Raya and Gabriel. There's a little injury doubt with Raya, though he ended up playing in the match. They both blanked. As did Timber, got another yellow card as well. So just a really strange match. And then from a City perspective, I mean, Haaland scored again, but it's just because they're conceding so many goals right now. He's not even really getting bonus points or really have an opportunity for multiple returns. And so so he's and obviously he's also cost twice as much as some of the other players that you would consider. And so I will say the pricing kind of worked in the sense they more or less kind of eliminated him from the game. And I mean, obviously, like I don't know, Haaland eliminated himself in a sense because he had a really terrible run of form kind of going into the holidays. But I just think it's really tricky right now with either City or Arsenal. To sort of figure out what you want to do with them moving forward. And my inclination is just to kind of continue to avoid them. And because, we don't expect, although it's certainly, it's still possible that Arsenal double in 25, but if they don't, then at least we get another week to sort of figure out what we maybe want to, or don't want to do with Arsenal moving forward. And so, that kind of runs you through, I think, the key highlights from this weekend. I'm trying to think of any other matches that I wanted to hit on. I thought the Wolves Villa was, I mean, Fulham had a great win. If Brandon were here, we would have talked about the Fulham match more. But Wolves Villa, was an impressive away win for them. Really nice late goal from Cunha. I thought it was just, I think that when Watkins went off at halftime, it was sort of, they were kind of done. And I think there's probably a little bit of a Champions League hangover for them as well, because they had to play their full squad at midweek. And obviously Wolves had no European commitments, and so it was a little easier. Maybe they had a slightly stronger squad. And I think also it was just kind of a tricky situation there as well, because you had Duran leaving and then Cunha sort of committing to staying as well. And so I wonder if there was just a little bit of a kind of emotional lift for Wolves, whereas Villa are fielding kind of a weaker squad. I mean, I just don't. Maybe Watkins was happy about Duran leave. Maybe nobody liked this guy. I don't know. Who knows? I'm not inside the clubhouse, but in general, Duran leaving weakens that squad, right? Which is maybe not what you want when you're sort of fighting a two-pronged war in the Champions League and the Premier League. So maybe they were slightly deflated, and Wolves were up. I don't know. I mean, this is just like I love to. Maybe just for my own entertainment, try to do these kind of psychological readings of these matches. So, but regardless, it was a blank from Villa. Another yellow card from Rodgers. Absolutely maddening. It feels like he's got to get his temper in check. It's from a fantasy perspective. Of course, he scored a brace in the Champions League, and then gets the yellow card midweek. But that's just how fantasy goes. So that's. Yeah, I think that covers what I want to cover in the. We didn't really cover the Everton match, but I guess we did enough. I don't know. I mean, let's see how the second leg goes. But it was an impressive performance, and they basically are up now. I mean, 3 wins in 3. That should be plenty for them moving forward. And given the other teams at the bottom of the table, so credit to they made, I suppose, the right signing in Moyes. I mean, maybe who knows? Maybe any manager could have done it, but he came in and got 3 wins in 3 and effectively secured them going up. And so. I don't know. And he's less irritating to me than like a Big Sam, So I was like a little more okay with Moyes than Big Sam. All right. So let's, I want to do just a quick Patreon shout out. Go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to support the podcast. We do extra podcasts each week. And usually it's me and Brandon, although I did a solo one last week. And you can chat on the Discord. I thought the Discord was incredibly helpful, especially as social media gets kind of increasingly fragmented. It is nice to have a kind of stable place where you're not trying to toggle between several different social networks, try to find the voices that you trust. There's enough, like, it's just a very smart community of people I really trust and whose opinions I respect. So when everything kind of broke on Friday, I was in there with friend of the podcast, Dave, and lots of other people, Aloha Lounge and Luke, and I don't need to read off everybody, but there's a ton of people in there who were talking things through, and it was great to be a part of that community. So if you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/always cheating. You also get an ad-free podcast feed. You get mini leagues, kit contests, all sorts of stuff going on. When Brandon's back next week, we'll do an update on our second half kit giveaway. I want to see what my kit is for next season. I got my Dulwich Hamlet kit from last year behind me. So, and the rule once again is whoever wins our second half league gets to pick a kit of their choice. It just cannot be a Premier League kit. You've got to move outside. It can be your, anywhere in Europe, anywhere globally. It can even be within the within England itself. It just cannot be a Premier League squad. So. So a quick thank you though to some new patrons, Drew Kalbach, Pat Muck, aka Skinny Nige, and Jarl Dahlstrom. So thank you to newest patrons. Always great to get patrons. This once you're into the second half of the season. So that's where we are. There are a couple of questions I thought I'd just take real quick. One is. Timbo said, would you take a hit to double up on Bournemouth mids this week? No, I would not. And are they, should I know this already? They're away to Southampton? No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously you have the double in 25. There's no chance of them doubling. I think owning Bournemouth mids moving forward makes a lot of sense, but, I don't know. I hate to keep saying it depends, but it really does depend on what we get in terms of the in terms of the doubles for game week 25. I mean, it may be that if Watkins is injured, there's just kind of no one really that we kind of trust for 25 on Villa. And so, in a case like that, maybe you do want to look at a Bournemouth mid, but no, I wouldn't take two. Although I will say taking a hit is probably fine next week, because it's going to be a double, and most people are not. I don't know. I don't want to speak for everybody, but certainly I'm not savvy enough to have saved up a number of transfers for a surprise double game week. And so I think a lot of people, myself included, are going to be taking hits next week. So I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself into this. Maybe you can take a hit for multiple Bournemouth bids. I think having one would be fine. But again, let's just see how it plays out with the doubles first. All right. Couple more questions. Alhar's, I talked about the assistant manager, triple captainers. There were a few more assistant manager chips. Stephen Curtis asked about playing assistant manager from 25 to 27. And he asked, who to go with. And I think it just, again, I'm sorry to give such a boring answer, but I really do think it depends on who doubles in 25 and 27. I mean, I do think that there's a pretty strong case for going with Villa as a possible assistant manager for 25. I mean, it would be in some ways kind of ideal because you would have the Ipswich match, right? So the good chance for a clean sheet and multiple goals to run up the score, and a win, obviously. But then you have the Liverpool match, so you have the chance for a kind of like knocking off a massive squad and getting bonus points for that because I can't remember where Villa are at the moment, but they're certainly not like in the top 4 slots. There must be mid-table ish right now. So they would get some points for that as well. So you kind of get a chance to get points 2 different ways. And so I think that one would make some sense. The other doubles, if Spurs win, then I do think that you could look at Marco Silva and Fulham as well, just because they can kind of beat anybody. You wouldn't necessarily get the points for not. I think they'd be above. Well, they'd be below Forest, and so you might get a little bit from that. But they'd be above Spurs. So, but both matches are home, so there's at least an opportunity there. And they certainly score multiple goals at home. So maybe they could just, even if they conceded goals, they could maybe win both those matches. So yeah, but otherwise, I think beyond that, it's just too hard to say what the Ben Crellin does predict that we're going to have almost certainly going to have two additional double game weeks down the line. I can't remember which weeks those are. I think they're like 31 and 35 or something like that. So they won't be as big as previous years, but that is incoming. So there will be more opportunities to use the assistant managership beyond just game week 25. So again, we could talk about that more on next Sunday's pod. Any other questions that I want to get to? Toko Ramirez says, am I crazy to continue to ignore Forest? Their next four fixtures look tricky. Wood et al. Are ruining my chances of mini league glory. I'm sorry to say it, Toko, but you are, well, I don't really know, because I'm it's like, no, you're not crazy, but because I mean, let's see, the upcoming run of fixtures, let me pull it up here for them, is away to Fulham, away to Newcastle, home to Arsenal, home to Man City. Not great, agreed, but I don't know. I mean, Fulham just scored a couple of goals away to Newcastle. If I could get something in that. Fulham, even though Robinson has been a good fantasy asset, they concede plenty of goals. Arsenal, tricky, but they're at home and they've beaten plenty of quality squads at home. And Man City, like, that match shouldn't even be classified as a difficult match at this point. Like, I mean, Man City could score some goals in that match, but again, I guess it's more like, I can see the argument for maybe not getting a Forest defender, but I think Wood is still fine. I mean, it's just he's in a couple of form, and the whole team is playing well, and so it's creating chances for him. It's not about whether you really kind of rate Wood or not. It's just everything is working so well up front. And if you really just can't figure out a way to get another forward, or like you just love your, I don't know, maybe you're just in love with Njai and you just can't part with him at all moving forward, then maybe it is time to look at Morgan Gibbs White. I mean, again, nobody owns this guy, so those points are it's like hitting on a lower team with the assistant managership. I mean, those points will feel even more. They'll help even more if you get points from him. So I think, I mean, I get it. And I've been sort of doing this kind of fixture dance with Forrest as well. And I'm really surprised by how much it's really hurt me. And Toko, it could hurt you too. Don't be like me, Toko. Be smarter, be better, and just bring in at least bring in Chris Wood. He's just too good this season to not have him. And it's like he's having like a Jamie Vardy when Leicester won the Premier League level season. And somehow I actually have owned him, but I haven't owned him for like the last 12 weeks, and I've really lived to regret it. So that'd be my answer there, Toko. So I think I'm going to end things there. This is a very long time for me to talk without an interruption or break, and my throat is getting dry. So I am going to end the podcast here. I'll do another final shout out for the Patreon. If you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. I also want to thank all of our producer patrons. Thank you to Mike DePietro. Mike DePietro, I have a little story for you. All of those cards that you gave me, those football/soccer cards, my kid came home from school last week, and they wanted to see if we had any Messi or Ronaldo cards. They're still the big names at school. The Mo Salah is never quite taken off the way Messi and Ronaldo have. And so I was looking for Messi and Ronaldo cards, and so we were digging through the cards that you sent me to see what was in there. There actually was a Messi card in there, so that was really fun. So thanks again for sending those to me and Brandon. Trevor Ingerson, you need to go see a movie or something sometime soon. I'm not going to do this for every single patron here. Dave Ragnar-Lodahl, thanks again for coming to the pod last week, Dave. Our buddy Chris Howell, Andy Penn, Nick Wright, Lazarus Yanos, Jesse Halstead, Brian Chin, Babas Kuhn. That's on a great season, by the way, about Brian Chin. Babas Kuhn, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons, Terrence O'Donnell, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner as he does it, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Craig Jackson, Colin Robbie, Brian Clark, Thomas Tisloff, Fro Jacobson, Gareth H., Shalin F. Kadakia, Rishi Nigam, Noah Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Matthew Skinner, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Rin Sandberg, James Murray Wood, James C., and James Holland, as well as Scully, Craig at Total Math Tutoring, and Francis Mann. Once again, thank you for everyone who listened. Thanks everyone who joined the stream today. If you want, you can follow the podcast on YouTube. Another follow is always appreciated. You can also follow, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can follow us on Spotify and get new podcasts there, or Apple Podcasts. I'm still an Apple Podcast guy through and through. Google Play, Stitcher, Acast. What else is out there? You let me know. If you're listening on some new podcast platform, you really like it, I'm all ears. I am willing to try. I always kind of fall back to Apple Podcasts. Maybe just, I'm sure there are better ones out there, but I'm just used to it. But I'm open to other ideas. You can follow us on Blue Sky. That's where we are most of the time these days. Instagram, Facebook. You can email us, hailcheaters@gmail.com. You can visit our website, alwayscheating.com. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We will talk to you soon. Bye.